Hey everyone, Yan Zhao here. Tonight we are live. We have two of the top writers in the indie sphere. We have Ishiro Finney
Hello there.
and Clint Stoker, aka Sweetcast.
Hey, good to be here.
So, in tonight's special broadcast, I kind of wanted to bring people in. I've been noticing more and more recently that it just seems like mainstream comics, at least the big two, and maybe some of the larger indie companies, have just kind of given up. I mean, they're just scraping the bottom of the barrels, not many ideas. Just in the last couple of weeks, the big story idea at Superman was men probe an alien. And it just seemed to me that, it's one thing for all of us to complain about how bad things are, but at some point you have to give people hope. You have to let people know what could you be getting if you had competent writers. So tonight we've got two writers plus me. We're going to be talking about, what would we do if we had access to some of these iconic characters? It's not enough to say like, oh, you can, go check out all these indie books that are great, but you have to compare apples to apples. What could we be getting at the big two with competent writers? So tonight we are going to take a look and see what could be for Spider-Man, Captain America, Batman, and Superman.
Right.
All right. So thanks for coming, guys.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Yeah. I had a Green Arrows idea.
Oh yeah. All right.
It's
We'll
not
hear
my,
that too.
I
We'll hear
can I
that.
can do any of them, but I'm good.
All right. Well, let's start it off with a Marvel classic. We have Peter Parker, who was Spider-Man, who was a teenager, got bitten by a radioactive spider. Things went to his head, and because of that, his Uncle Ben died. He spent the next 50 years real time, 5 years comic time, trying to atone for that by fighting crime. So, any thoughts? What would you guys do for Spider-Man?
That's the most difficult one, I think, because
Yeah, for me too.
the problem with Spider-Man is he's in New York, which is the center of the Marvel universe. The world revolves around Manhattan, apparently. So it crosses over into... He would cross paths with so many other characters within the Marvel universe. And so in that regard, the problem with Spider-Man is you kind of need to reboot the entire world for him to work now. The world they've created or turned the Marvel universe into is so morally bankrupt that a character who is all about the moral questions, Spider-Man, what do you got for him to do? I mean, we've got heroes, quote unquote, now that are having gala among the stars, talking about how they're going to confine humanity to Earth, and it's such a good thing. And we've got an X-Man brat stabbing a guy in the neck because she saw a bag on the beach, and just Spider-Woman being a shitty mom. This world is so morally bankrupt that really Spider-Man at his heart, being again an average kid. Well, maybe not. I mean, he's a nerdy guy. Given those superpowers, we all read about him abusing it, learning a lesson, and deciding, no, I've got to be a better person for it, and essentially a redemption path, and then him learning to be a hero. Without that moral question, his character is just another superpowered human among many.
Yeah. I think with Spider-Man, he's best as the underdog, and he's also best with when he's dealing with where the stakes are more personal and interpersonal. What I mean by that is it's not like intergalactic. Like whenever there's big stakes, it seems like in comics right now, it's always like the end of the world, or like it's just such a big, massive thing. The last Spider-Man run I read was actually Dan Slott on Superior Spider-Man, and at that point it was like he's a CEO. Peter Parker's a CEO. He's not only that, but he's dealing with losing his own like his existence essentially was taken over by Doc Ock. It's just such big stakes. And I don't think that's what Peter Parker does the best. I think the reasons why so many people like Spider-Man is because he's more grounded. So to me, you'd want to take it almost like closer street level crime kind of stuff. But also the stakes have more to do with smaller level stuff. So I think like you have to introduce the aspect of friends. Again, best Spider-Man stories are always involving friends, him having these personal relationships. If you didn't reboot it, maybe you could have I don't know, again, like group of friends that he's with. He's nobody essentially in this world. He's an underdog, and it sort of escalates from there. That's to me the best Spider-Man story. So I wouldn't want to really mess with that formula, I guess. You wouldn't want it to be formulaic, but you want to tread new ground in that sort of interpersonal, street level kind of area.
Yeah, I agree. I think Spider-Man in a lot of ways is the most accessible of these superheroes because he's got problems that everybody has. He's broke. He's, trying to put his way through college. He's really basically taking care of his aunt who's, on disability or Social Security. Mm-hmm. And he's in love with a girl who's way out of his league, at least if you consider the Mary Jane relationship. Mm-hmm. And he's got basically the weight of the world on his shoulders. But he also has this moral responsibility that he kind of needs to help take out these the street crime. So yeah, I think you do have to wheel it back. I think the other problem with Spider-Man is that in some ways Peter Parker is like Bart Simpson. Like Bart Simpson is great because he's 10 years old, but probably 30-year-old Bart Simpson, you wouldn't necessarily want to follow his life. Mm-hmm. And I think that, in a lot of ways, middle-aged Peter Parker is in the same boat. Unless he somehow fixes things up or actually does become a decent CEO, he's it's not going to be that great. So I would wheel it back to probably post high school Peter Parker, like when he's in college studying science or whatever he thought he was going to major in. And he's sort of, MJ has caught his eye and he's trying to date her, and sort of the moral implications of like how much time can he take off of the superheroing and the taking the photos for the Daily Bugle, and like how many shortcuts basically can he take and to keep these plates spinning, and make something that makes his life happy.
Yeah. I almost think like if you were going to continue it, if you were just going to continue it, like let's say you're not rebooting, if you took him out of his element and put him over his head, that to me is like the most interesting mm-hmm. Spider-Man. So like him starting up a company, and I don't mean like CEO level. I feel like they've already ruined that. Like it's impossible to do now, but him like trying to make ends meet doing this like side hustle or something, you know what I mean? That would actually be interesting to me. You get super in over his head, make mistakes, have some friends involved or whatever that cause more problems. I don't know. Yeah, to me, you have to make him vulnerable and seemingly powerless, even though he's a superhero. But that's what makes him so interesting.
Yeah, and I think he would be the one to play up the relationship stuff too, because he's finally come out of that like awkward phase. So how does he relate to girls? He's not quite the skinny loser anymore. He knows he could lift a car with one hand, but like, how do you do that without going Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 3?
Yeah. Emo Spider-Man, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough. Spider-Man definitely, I think, is almost the most difficult because there's been so much that's been done with him, and it does feel like they've kind of pushed him in every other direction other than Spider-Man.
Mhm.
That it's like it kind of takes away some opportunities. But I don't know. To me, like, yeah, Spider-Man trying to make his way through college, trying to like get it, pay ends meet, all that kind of stuff. That's where I'd want to play with Spider-Man.
Well, if you get him to adulthood and successful, his journey's over.
Mhm.
That was what he was working toward.
Yep.
At that point, he is just another superhero. And the other thing is, I'll come back to, is I noticed the 4 characters we're critiquing here, or trying to save, Spider-Man, Captain America, Batman, and Superman.
Mhm.
These are all very moral characters,
Yes.
and they hate them.
Yeah.
That's why we got to save them first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good point.
All right. Any other thoughts on Spider-Man, or should we move on?
Well, unless you want to answer any of the chat here.
Let's see here. So we've got Bob Keller. First thing you do is retcon one more day. See, Bob, I would go one better. I would have, a story where everything in the Marvel universe since 2005 is basically just fan fiction. Like, that's where we would have Kamala Khan. Everything since 2005, especially everything since 2015, all happened in her imagination.
Are we going to give her a St. Elsewhere finale where she wakes up? It's all been a dream, and that she's actually some disabled kid in a hospital.
I like that. What we could have is we could have Jean Grey like telepathically in her mind, trying to save her, and then it's like, oops, nothing we can do. Just forget all that, and then just never mention her again.
The thing is, Kamala Khan was like the one new character that, if they'd done it right, could have been a kind of a nice female version of Spider-Man. Because originally, the way it was starting to be written, there was a lot of potential. It's just none of the writers, even the good ones, could not get past their woke politics.
Yeah, she was a vehicle for that.
Yeah,
that was really the intent.
Yeah, I mean, we did. I don't know if you recall that Kat and I did an Adventures in Awful with a Kamala Khan book, and it was fluctuating between this nonsense story, and then you'd get her family drama that was like really well written and very believable. Dealing with her being, coming from a Muslim family that's very strict, and her struggling with that, and then it would go back to this meaningless story that didn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah, it is a shame because it does seem like there really is a hole in the marketplace for a realistic immigrant type character, like a more modern one, especially from, Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, where, they're really struggling between like they want to be American like all the other kids are versus, their parents, and not have their parents come off as total jerks. like parents generally want to instill those values for a reason because they think they're important. And a lot of times because they think they weren't able to live by those values in the old country. So that's why they came here, so that tension would be great, but I don't know who's doing that.
Well, and the problems too are not like with the family problems. I think why those are more interesting is because they're allowing for some nuance. Whereas, like you've seen, like, oh, you can't stop us get to the polls, to vote or whatever. Like it's so on the nose, and it's also just like a caricature of the bad guy and what the bad guy is. And given like in Spider-Man, it was Flash Thompson that was sort of over the top, really on the nose, but he's not actually what made his struggles so interesting. It was the more like the difficult questions with Uncle Ben having been killed, and I don't know, they were just, those were the more interesting things. So I feel like with a lot of modern Marvel stuff is they focus on just making this is clearly the bad guy, that wants to suppress you in this way. Well, like, I don't know, make it more interesting than that. There's so much more that they could do. And even if you went along in that vein of being an immigrant, feeling like an outsider, I mean, a lot of it's not just going to be like, oh, the white straight men are stopping me, oppressing me. Like there could be all sorts of super interesting interpersonal stuff with like imagine everyone's the exact same race. There are still going to be some really interesting difficulties that could come up that I think would, it's a shame that they wouldn't tackle those kinds of things as much.
All right. So William Silva says, a proper small businessman Spider-Man era is something I would love to see. Could Spider-Man should be a flash forward storyline.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And kind of like Ishi was saying, it seems like that would be like on the tail end of the arc of Spider-Man's life, where he's like sort of the last hurdle to where he's successfully integrated all these parts of his life.
He's got like a photography business going, which is a tough one. And then he I don't know, nobody gives a rip about him, like I don't know. You could do some interesting stuff with that, I think.
Yeah, I think it would have to combine his technology stuff. So like he would invent some special lens that you could put on a cell phone to make it look, like a telephoto lens or something, or an improved selfie stick.
Yeah. Yeah, the people think he's a quack and it doesn't work, and he's got a business partner ripping him off or something, and he's got to figure out how to get money for the rent and the bank. And
he's partnering up with Harry Osborn, whose dad has like kicked him out of the business. So now he's trying to start this business to prove his dad that he can do it too. But he doesn't understand how to live like an average person lives because he's used to being rich all his life.
That's really interesting stuff, actually. Yeah.
Dipping into the company fund one too many times for sushi.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be funny is if him and Peter had started up some sort of tech company in the aughts or something. And it turns out to be like a metaphor for Twitter and Osborn screwing him.
Exactly. And he's got like Tony Stark making clones of all of his inventions.
Ripping him off. Yeah.
All right. So we have Kat here. I'd love to see something other than Peter Parker. Well, Kat, there is something to be said for Miles Morales and some of the other Spider-Mans, but it just seems like those aren't Spider-Man stories to me. I mean, it's like there's nothing wrong with them, but
yeah.
Well, I was going to save this for my Batman pitch, but I will jump ahead and just say, do Batman Beyond with Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing too. If Peter does successfully complete his story arc, then that sets him up to be the wise mentor, which you sort of see a little bit in like Into the Spider-Verse and the Sony stuff, which I think that's the more, I don't know if responsible or palatable way to use him, since they're not going to reboot the Spider-Man universe to make him the teenager again. It's fine to have Miles Morales, but he needs sort of that guidance, and it makes sense of Peter's like, look, I got a hot wife, and I'm doing all these business meetings. I got a golf thing at 4. I can't be Spider-Man anymore. I need you to take over for me.
Yeah. It's almost
Spider-Man's
like
getting a little old.
You should have a
Swinging from
pot
those
belly.
webs is kind of hard.
it's kind of, it is kind of like Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
Yeah, or not necessarily, because you don't have the, but it's sort of a future take on him. That's the thing too, is it does feel like, man, there's been just so much done with Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's a tough one.
Yeah.
If one more question, who would you guys want to be your artist if you got to write a run on Spider-Man?
Well, I'd get Ditko out of retirement.
That would be epic.
Oh wait, he's dead now, isn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd resurrect him from the grave.
There you go.
Easy. I'm not even sure. I haven't really put that much thought into it. I always say, like, I want to do a book with Phil Noto. I don't necessarily know that Spider-Man would be the right book for Phil Noto, but I would like to do a book with him. If I had given the opportunity, I'd make it happen, I guess.
I don't know. I think I got to go with Todd McFarlane on this.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know. There, Ditko. If I couldn't have Todd, I'd want Steve. But I think Todd, in a lot of ways, sort of redefined the visual look of the character.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. How would you fix Batman?
I have an idea for this. My problem with Batman is that far too often, him being the mastermind, it gets overplayed. That's my problem with Batman. And so what I would like to see is Batman go against one of the weaker villains, in my opinion, and be overconfident and estimate his own abilities and fail in a pretty miserable way. So like, I don't know, it could be the Mad Hatter, maybe. I mean, they're all the villains have some potential, but I would want to pick one that you wouldn't expect to be as formidable as they have become, and it's because Batman made a tragic mistake. And the rest of the story arc would be him trying to correct this mistake and having been outdone by a supervillain that is he couldn't plan for. He didn't have the answers for 3 years ahead of time, or however long he plans ahead.
So someone like Hush.
Potentially. I mean, Hush, let me remind me. Hush, the wasn't the villain, didn't it end up being the Riddler? Am I right?
No, Hush was interesting, or at least when Paul Dini was writing him, because essentially he was Bruce if he'd taken the bad path.
Oh yeah. So that could be interesting. I think like super boil it down to like something super simple. I don't know, like not Batman breaking his back, but like Batman getting kidnapped or something by the Calendar Man. I don't know, like somebody that just you wouldn't expect, but yeah. I don't know. It was pretty vague, but that's what I got.
Batman Breaking Bad. How about that?
There you go.
What do you think, Ishi?
Okay, so for Batman, again, the big problem both these universes, they've been so vandalized that there really is no saving them in their current state. You're going to have to reboot it.
Oh yeah.
But with Batman, really the best way to save him would be to kind of return to basics, and kind of go back to the Batman that we all grew to love and why he was so interesting at the time. And I would take it back to the character he was during the Timverse. And it would be that simple. Alternately, I love Batman Beyond. That is one of those properties that I wanted to write so badly. And when I had an in with DC and we were doing some work for them, I hounded the editor there to let me do a Batman Beyond story. Never happened. Didn't happen, unfortunately. But I would like to take the idea of Batman Beyond and give it just a straight ahead classic story that we can enjoy, and just screw all the woke stuff and all that. And my idea would be a Clockwork Joker, okay? Where you've got these two narratives where, again, they all love the Joker, right? It seems the Joker has returned. Then you find out. Did you ever see The Return of the Joker? The animated?
I think so. It's been a while.
I don't think I have.
Wait, in Batman Beyond, The Return of the Joker? Oh, yeah.
Well, you remember that Joker had been put onto a chip? I would explain where that chip came from. That some scientist over at Arkham was obsessed with figuring out the criminal mind, and that essentially he'd taken a psychological imprint of Joker and had them as data to research, and that's where the chip came from. And who knows how it got into was it, I forget which Robin it was put in his head. Do you recall that?
Don't.
Gigantic spoiler if anyone hasn't seen it by now. One of the Robins that retired, who wouldn't speak to Bruce anymore, for the chip of Joker was put into his head, and he had a split personality. And what it was is the story I would tell is that the Joker's engrams have been put on this chip, and that some mad scientist type at Arkham was sticking them into patients' head to study, the Joker. And that one of these guys that had it stuck in his head was one of the members of the Jokers, the gang. And that you get his narrative where he doesn't know what's wrong with himself. And he has this second voice talking to him and taunting him and driving him nuts. And you get kind of a Clockwork Orange plot. Meanwhile, that's what Terry and Bruce have to figure out.
That's cool.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
And I'd make it really screwed up where the Joker's taunting and torturing the guy he's in, and making him cut the smile into his face and say, "Oh, you really think you know the joke? No, I'll show you the joke."
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff you could do with that. I would read that. That's pretty good. I'd pitch that and read it.
I would go a little different track. I would. I really enjoyed Mask of the Phantasm, which I think is possibly the best Batman movie out there. And one of the reasons I liked it is because it plays with Bruce and his commitment to being the Batman. So I had an idea where, it starts out with sort of a flashback where during the years that Bruce was training to be Batman, he ends up in Hong Kong for a while. So he's ostensibly, doing some stuff for Wayne Corp, some business development. But he really goes to train with a traditional Kung Fu family. And a lot of these, he trains enough so he's allowed into the actual family. And when you do that, you sort of have responsibilities. It's almost like being in the mafia without the crime. So there's all these business people who are connected to the Kung Fu family, and it serves to help win enterprise and everything. But he really forms almost like a father-son relationship with his master. So we go back years later, and Bruce is in Gotham, and one of his fellow students, from the Kung Fu Academy, I guess you call it, the Wushu Hall. He comes to Gotham, and Bruce, of course, receives him and takes him out to dinner and stuff. And he's like, "Hey, look, Bruce, something's not right with the master. I don't know. He seems really nervous. Things are wrong. Can you please, check in on him?" And so, Bruce, he FaceTimes him, and something seems really off. Like the master doesn't want to talk to him like usual. So Bruce heads over there, and he's in Hong Kong now. So he's in a city that he's familiar with, but he hasn't lived there probably in like 20 years at this point. His Cantonese is, getting a little rusty. And he's not quite sure who the new players in town are. So he, starts Batmaning his way around. He thinks maybe it's like a local street gang problem. And he ends up finding himself against new villains. We'll call them the Eight Immortals. And they're, all different flavors of Kung Fu and martial arts. And he's got to fight his way through. And he ends up finding out that they're actually from the same wushu school. They're in the family. So now he's got this dilemma of, okay, wait, I need to, fight crime, but they're family. And then there's some implications that maybe his master, who he sees kind of as a surrogate father, is behind this. So he's got to really make that decision. Can he take losing another father, basically, even though he knows they're not related officially, but he has that feeling. And it's all about him trying to get to the bottom of, who's really doing what, and can he bring himself to basically, kill that relationship with another father figure.
Yeah. So again, we're talking about just ignoring all the crap that's going on right now and telling a good story.
Again, in this universe, there would be another child in a hospital who's having a dream of, Superman in prison. And
it was all hallucination.
It would be this young gay man who had been bonked on the head and he had been in a coma, and he had this dream that he was Superman's son and having all these homoerotic dreams. And then he wakes up.
It's funny, but like I've heard some there are worse explanations for mistakes that these publishers have made before.
Yeah, I got a feeling most of us would be on the same page. Like, yep, good enough. Let's not talk about that anymore.
Yeah,
never happened.
Carry on.
So we've got Neostar Digital Joker, AI that can imprint Joker's personality onto somebody. Yeah, mass producing the Joker. So imagine if you mix that with like the Scarecrow's fear-inducing technology.
So after we get the Clockwork Joker story I was talking about, the scientist dumps it on the web, or somehow it gets loose on the web, and all these people who are plugged into VR start getting brainwashed and become Jokers. So you have a whole city full of them.
That would be interesting. What would you do then?
Oh, I'm sure Bruce would figure something out. But that would be a multi-story arc. That would go on for issues. That's a problem that doesn't just go away.
So here's
sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. And
well, we were also always talking about, who does the art, right?
Yeah.
Well, I would suggest doing having it be Mark Harrison of 2000 AD,
Ooh.
who, you familiar with him?
Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff.
Who did the Scarlet Cantos arcs with Durham Red. And if you've ever seen this guy's art, it is just amazing. It's got a real cinematic quality to it. Actually, here, I'll give you a link to. I can. I'll give it to you in the private chat.
Oh, all right.
And maybe you can share that.
Give me a second here. There we go. Yeah, so Mark says, have Batman being less emotional. He's much better character when he's more stoic. I agree, but I think the stoicism has to be a choice, right? If he's just default stoic and no emotions, for me, that's a little boring, but it's more like I kind of like him when he's got some emotional conflict and he's like, no, I have to shut it off and get with the program in order to achieve whatever his objectives are. But maybe that's just me, and I think that that helps make Batman be a little bit more relatable because everybody's got times in their life where they're, internally freaking out, but you have to portray confidence and
Usually I think the way that it's done well is when Batman goes too far and then afterward you can you sense that guilt in him or the regret almost, but it's subtle, but I mean it's it's pretty clear. I'm trying to think, was that the Long Halloween? No, what was it, the Long Halloween where he beats up the Joker, pounds his face in, and it just keeps going and going? Maybe I got the wrong one. Anyway, but there's a moment where there's like this guilt factor, that I don't know, it's palpable, but it's subtle.
Anything else on Batman, or should we?
I think we've covered Batman.
Yeah.
All right, then let's take America's greatest hero. What would you do to bring Cap back?
That is easy. That is absolutely easy. First, we figure out a way to retcon everything Ta-Nehisi Coates has done. Essentially, that's a clone, or that's some sort of evil plot, or it got retconned out of existence. Again, all that is just garbage. And make Captain America what he always was, and that was all the best things about America and essentially everything that was in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And he would oppose what stands against that. And, I think we'd need some villains that, one of the things that people often forget or get wrong is, and we're seeing this a lot with the woke crowd, is having the superhero go out and actually fight this specific thing they don't like. And that never works. I mean, one of the most retarded things was Superman versus the KKK. It's like, well, geez, that's hard. Were there like 6,000 of these guys left? Okay, and
if they were burning kryptonite crosses, that might have been a little more interesting.
Yeah, it was like Superman versus some ants. I mean, so who cares? No, you always would introduce a villain that symbolized what you were opposing. So instead of the KKK, you should have had some sort of racist super villain.
Yeah.
So that was their first big failure.
Marvel's had a bunch of those over the years too.
Yeah, there's no shortage of ones, but again, it's not like these guys do anything original. So yeah, what you would do is you would need to create some supervillains that represent essentially woke media and the rising threat of urban violence and from Antifa and other leftists. And essentially it's Captain America versus commies. There's your story. Captain
Yeah.
America versus commies.
That's actually not far off from what I was thinking too, because the way that I looked at it is I think Captain America as he is today has forgotten why he is Captain America and what he stood for. So to me, that's actually, you're laying the groundwork. The groundwork's already laid for him to have a growth moment and learn. So I would almost be interested to see, like, you could have him go to, I don't know, Venezuela or something. You could have him something in that vein. But what I would want to see is like him realize those values that he originally stood for, and sort of relearn how important those values are. He'll learn to value them, and I don't think you'd have to do it really on the nose. I mean, his name's Captain America, so there's inherently some political nature to him in that sense. But I think like, just lean into it. He's Captain America, for crying out loud. So I don't know. I would like to see him like go through a gauntlet to relearn. Maybe there's some human trafficking or something. That would be kind of interesting if you wanted to be timely. And I mean, no one who's for human trafficking, but you could still have him relearn those values of like freedom, and like that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think you could do something interesting there.
I'm sorry. This is way over the top, but you know how a lot of the old Captain America plots were usually, oh, well, another nation has created another super soldier to challenge him, or, you had various supervillains that were in an attempt to create an equivalent to him. Well, on Epstein Island, Epstein was always bringing scientists over there.
Ooh.
And he had visions of creating his own. He did. This is real. He was going to repopulate the planet with his superior seed and have his own race of him that he was going to father. So what if instead he turned himself into a super pedo?
Oh gosh.
I don't know, but wouldn't that would just be another guy in Hollywood, though?
Well, he would be the one. But the thing about that is, if you had a villain that was basically based on him, on Epstein, he would represent the corrupt aspects of corporate America, intelligentsia, and Hollywood all at once, and politics. Because he was dead center in all of that.
Yeah.
And maybe you could even give him a Ghislaine Maxwell sidekick type.
Yeah, maybe it's like a simple thing Captain America goes to save. Again, it can be, not so on the nose, but you could still have the same concept, but have him go do a simple rescue mission, and then find out he rescued the wrong kids, like it was tied into this power structure. And I know that they're, again, who supports that? It wouldn't actually be divisive politically. But your average comic book reader would be like, yeah, this is, it would actually be fairly universal. Him finding that there's this elite power that is trying to, they're fine with whatever Captain America does. They'll clap for him, as long as he's fighting okayed villains. But when it's their little piece of the universe they don't want him to touch, then you have the super the new super Epsteins coming.
Well, here's a twist. What if you had this Epstein type villain with his island, and he's working with Intergang, and he's using apocalypse tech? There you go.
Yeah.
And I mean, from what I understand, the Intergang has done human trafficking in past plots.
That's true.
Yeah.
As well as stealing kids to give to Granny Goodness. No, that's one of the things the Intergang did.
Yeah.
If are you familiar with that? Or am I?
It's been a while. It's kind of like I vaguely can see it in my mind, but I can't quite think of the whole storyline.
Kirby introduced was that Apocalypse had representatives on Earth doing things for them. so that no one, it was essentially their invisible hand. And the Intergang was essentially this mafia, and it was a traditional, Tommy guns and, with pinstripe suit mafia that had, that the top level was working with Darkseid or Darkseid. And when Darkseid needed something, like children to give to Granny Goodness, they'd take care of it, and they would throw them through a boom tube. And he, in return, he gave them technology or money or whatever they wanted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had very similar ideas. The only thing for me is I would basically have instead of like Venezuela, because who wants to be Venezuelan? Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't even look good from the outside. I would say China, which I'm sure the stream will come down any second now. But China for me is the logical choice because if you're going to have Cap, and we're going to have him rediscover traditional American values, you sort of need like a mirror society that you could contrast the two. And on the surface, China looks great. I mean, the cities are absolutely gorgeous, especially from a distance, very modern. But once you get in there, it's like, ooh. So yeah, my original thought was you have a new Chinese group that sort of function like the press gang did from Genosha back in the old X-Men, where they're called the Fox Hunters, which are actually real people that come to countries, including America, and kidnap Chinese nationals to take them back to China. So they would kidnap the family of a scientist because they couldn't get him. And so, Cap is asked to help look into it because can't do anything officially. And Cap's sort of like down in the dumps, especially in the last couple of years politically. And, as he's going through, he finds like this network of communist infiltrators that are in all, areas of American life, on universities and stuff. And, as he goes through, he finds that there are Chinese nationals who are studying in the U.S. who actually help him out along the way because they're like, yeah, no, we don't like what's going back there. We came here to get away from all that nonsense. He eventually, picks up Black Widow for a little help with some espionage. They end up in Madripoor to talk to Patch, who gets them, new identities to go into China, where, he can actually see the conditions on the ground. And basically he's got by this point, the scientist had to return to save his family, and they're all in prisons. So Cap and some newfound friends over in China have to bust them out.
Nice.
I love it.
Yeah. I'd read that.
Could I make a request though?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, could he pick up a Bucky replacement in a Taiwan or in Hong Kong? And,
of
and
course.
his tagline can be China asshole. Don't trust China, China asshole.
Yep. He finds that guy.
The hero we all need.
Unfortunately, that guy was Hong Kongese, and he's probably in a prison somewhere now. But
yeah.
But yes, they definitely would. And I think that, talking about the immigrant thing from earlier, like this would be Cap's opportunity to, to separate the people who come from that kind of country and the ideology of the leaders of that country. So, you could see like people who are, over there, they're like, no, we don't like boots on our throat either. We want freedom, but not everyone can get out. And a lot of people, as Cap goes over there, he finds a lot of people are like, oh, nothing happened to me. Everything's fine. So it's not as clear cut, but certainly the Fox Hunters and the of course, superhuman that the scientists helped create would definitely be hardcore Kami.
Mhm.
And the other nice thing about Cap is since he is not like overpowered,
Mhm.
you can drop him into any number of Tom Clancy type plots
Yes, yes.
and it still work.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which I think is really what he should be doing.
Some great symbolic moments too, because you could have him talking to whatever that Taiwanese hero
Mhm.
or whatever, and him be ashamed. Like if he's like somewhat ashamed or apprehensive about his own shield and the symbol that it is, all it takes is an immigrant or someone working for living in another country to be like, "What are you talking about, man? That shield means this to me." You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And that would be like a cool growth
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reality check, you know.
Let's see here. So Dominic says Captain America runs of the past. Creative teams explore universal themes, even political ones that are timeless, while getting members of the audience to think critically.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as much as people say don't get political, this would be the character to get political
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. So,
Let's see. Captain China doesn't sound like a bad villain.
Well, I think really to do China correctly is you wouldn't have a Captain China.
Mhm.
You'd have a cheap knockoff that they've copied and mass produced.
Yes, he has 4 shields, one for each limb.
Yeah.
yeah, and any of them that didn't, you know, cut the mustard or whatever, they would be like sent off to a prison, you know, and dismantled to be reused or something, you know.
Yeah. Let's
Could
see.
be interesting.
Neostar. I'm surprised
That
they
works for
didn't
me.
make Shang-Chi Captain America.
Yeah.
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 I mean, maybe that actually would have gotten the movie shown in China. Make yeah. I mean, that would work for me too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The more I think about it, there's a ton you could do with Captain America.
especially right now. I mean,
Yeah.
someone who represents again the true America. You know, what our founding fathers envisioned. It's all the good parts, all the ideals. And really we need that right now because really we've got a comics industry that just hates this country and thinks we're the devil.
Mm-hmm. It's the safe thing to hate too. I think part of it, like the whole pitch with China or like any communism, all this kind of stuff. It's like I guarantee you the editors would be like, no, we can't do that. Oh,
Yeah.
but we can have Captain America hate America. That's okay. That's safe. Like that's the only safe option. You know.
Oh, and there was a plot that Kat and I had come up with once that we did a show on, which was you could do a Captain America where it's like another Civil War essentially,
Mhm.
and it's Captain America versus all these new woke characters that have been introduced who are trying to take down the government and undermine the US.
Yeah.
And now you've got a Cap that, you know, he's got to go easy on them to some degree because these are dumb kids. They've been brainwashed. They're stupid. And he has to come in and be the guy that says, I'm older, I'm wiser. Look, you've got a lot of energy and a lot of interest in doing change, but you really don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah. And they would be the ones too that are like, why do you still wear that shield? Why don't, if you considered changing your name from Captain America, like they would have started with that, you know.
Why not
And-
Captain Socialist?
Yeah.
Captain Diversity.
Captain Inclusivity.
Yeah. They want to change his costume to be rainbow colored.
With
That's
the
it.
brown triangle in the middle or whatever. It's yeah.
And he has to change his gender.
The only problem I could see with that is it seems like the action would be a little lackluster because all he has to do is just like put his hand out to like stop them from, you know, and they're just like swinging and they can't hit him.
Well, no, America Chavez is overpowered. Really, the only solution would be to send her back and lock her there in her home dimension.
He waterboards. He waterboards her.
Yeah, go back to your hell dimension.
I don't know. You could just have some cute girls walking by, and seems like she'd be distracted.
And I know there. What is it? The Amadeus Cho character.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
All right. So the greatest, the classic, most iconic superhero of all, Superman. How do you save him without using anuses?
So I have an idea for Superman, and this is very much not political at all, but it would be something like Superman Hollow Earth. And at the center of the earth, he hasn't known this, beneath his feet, there is an alien race that has been implanted there, and they've been producing kryptonite. Also, because of the extreme pressures in the center of the hollow earth, they're really strong. So when he goes down there, they straight up kidnapping damsel in distress, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He goes down there, and suddenly they're all just as strong as he is because their body is accustomed to all that pressure. And I don't know. I think you could do something with that. I just want a title that's called Superman Hollow Earth. What is what it comes down to. But
yeah, that's definitely worth writing a series around.
Could play with it. Yeah.
Any thoughts, Ishi?
You know, Superman is such a difficult one, especially with just how much they've hosed it up. I mean, it is so damaged that, again, it's another thing where you just have to retcon everything out of existence. You really would need the gay man who got bonked on the head, who is in a coma having homoerotic dreams of being Superman's son, waking up and saying, "Oh, none of this happened." But at this point, again, we're dealing with the DCU that is so amoral that a moral character doesn't have a place in it.
That's sad to hear you say that, but it's true. The more I think about it, it's like, what? They had all these great characters that's again their whole existence. Superman especially, that's what he is at his core. So then what do you have left?
Power, which is primarily what these people believe in. So
I mean, for me, in some ways, he's very similar to Captain America, but it's more like personal as opposed to like national politics, whereas Cap is like sort of concerned about, on more like a nation state level. I think the problem for me with most modern Superman is there's too much Superman and not enough Clark Kent. Clark Kent is all about how do you be a good person. And he has different issues with not using the power. Like I'm kind of tired of just like getting a bigger, badder bad guy, or like, he magically lost his powers or something. I want to see Superman in positions where, he chooses not to use his powers all the time because you won't get the best results. So like for me, every morning Clark would wake up, he would super fly out to Smallsville. He would do all the farm chores real quick, except for a few, because he doesn't want Pa Kent, to feel embarrassed, like he can't do anything. So he'll leave a few easy things. And then, then of course Martha will make some coffee, and they'll have coffee and talk. And then he'll super fly back to Metropolis. And I think Clark Kent does not love being Superman. I know this sounds a little weird.
Oh, no, I agree.
But, he would much rather at the end of the day go tailgating outside a Spartans game, or, he's dreaming about Lois, who's kind of out of his league. But to me, Clark is he's like that dad who works 40 hours a week, and he comes home and has dinner, and then he goes out and he drives for Uber for like 4 more hours because his daughter needs money for piano lessons. Like, that's how Clark sees being Superman. He does it and he's happy to help people, but he does it more out of like, I'm able to help these people. Therefore, I need to get kittens out of trees and stop old ladies from being mugged and stuff like that. But I think a more interesting story would be, sort of more in the beginning, how he gets Lois's attention, where he's stuck on daily planets, like he's out covering garage sales and like, firefighter, raising funds and stuff, pancake breakfast. And, he meets up with Jimmy, and they're starting to do a little like crime beat, but low level crime. And eventually, Clark's not a dumb guy. He's not necessarily Bruce Wayne smart, but he's got a sharp mind. So he notices that there's a connection, and he asks Lois for some advice. And Lois, humors these guys, and she gives him some advice where to look. She's investigating Lex Luthor, of course, because he's the big deal. She smells some sort of corruption there. It's like, and Lex is a lot more like Jeff Bezos. He's got his own space company. He's, got listening devices in everyone's home. So eventually, like Clark and Jimmy, they figure out that it's somehow collected to LexCorp and the mayor. But, every time Clark goes into Superman mode, like they all shut up. They won't talk because they know they're going to get in trouble with Superman. So he's got to start doing more things as Clark to be able to investigate inconspicuously. So all the criminals don't just scatter like cockroaches when you turn on the light. And, eventually he and Lois realize that they're kind of working on the same case. And then she's all impressed, and that's where she starts to like, oh yeah, Clark, huh? Very nice. And it goes from there.
Nice. That's really well thought out. I like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking too, like if it was a hacker group or something, totally not along those lines. But that would be interesting because it's you can't use your superpowers to help there, really. You know, like there's it would take a different skill set that he would have to work with people, or I don't know. Yeah, could be some interesting stuff.
Well, I do have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I think, could retcon everything out of existence. By the way, I want to say I'm so brain scrambled right now. I mixed up my Captain America pitch with DC. Intergang exists in the DCU, not the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I got when you were saying Dark Side, I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, I've been awake for about 45 minutes.
It's all good.
It's all right.
So you'd have to come up with an equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there is a Superman story I'd always wanted to do, which would be called Clark Kent is Superman. And you've got like this research group at CERN or some equivalent type of research into particle physics. And they start stumbling upon various dimensions and parallel universes. And they stumble across the Mandela effect. And there's this one scientist, for some reason, he starts remembering all the various incarnations of Superman. And it doesn't really add up. And he starts realizing that every time the universe starts to contradict, he's noticed that there's been all these events in the past where suddenly the physics of the universe start to contradict, and then suddenly history stops and everything's new again. And it always centers around Superman. And in his research, he suddenly realizes that Clark Kent is Superman. And he realizes that's the center of all the problems. And it has been established in the DCU that Superman is essentially the axis with which the entire universe functions upon, and without him, it all goes wrong. And so he's convinced that's the problem. And it would end with him going into the Daily Planet, pointing at Clark Kent and screaming, look, Clark Kent is Superman, and rips his glasses off. Look. And it's like, everyone's just, he doesn't look anything like him. What are you talking about? No one can see it. Only he can see it. And by the end, he's just driven utterly mad, and everyone thinks he's nuts because he can remember all the other incarnations of the DCU to all the crises.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it could be really interesting.
And then he later kind of becomes similar to the Question because he can remember all the continuities, but he's nuts.
That could be interesting. He
Yeah,
would definitely be going nuts.
And again, the twist being is that this is the way you could retcon all the current crap out.
Yeah. That would actually be a pretty interesting way to do it too, because you could essentially start fresh. Yeah, I don't know. It would be a more interesting way to do it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, well, we're starting out, we're going to be at number 1, ignore everything else. You know?
Yeah. We'll see you again in 3 years when we restart at number 1 again.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So let's see. Let's go back here. Plot is Superman's storyline where acts as a sequel to What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way,
Which was excellent.
That's the way to go.
Well, that's one of the problems is you can say, well, we need to respond to all this crap. It's already been done, and it's been done well.
Yeah.
That's already been responded to. It just went over a lot of readers' heads, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here we go. Another one. Whole storyline with Manchester Black as the main antagonist.
Yeah, that would work.
Ignore the man aspect in Superman. Yeah, I do think that is, some of the issues with a lot of these characters is, originally they were people who did super things, and they were a lot more relatable, and I think like those were a lot of the highlight times in their runs. Whereas like, now if it's just like, it's just like a logo, slap a logo on someone, you have these pre-installed values, which, it's more interesting when people struggle.
Yeah, I mean, we keep coming back to the problem that these people that are currently running the companies have no concept of what the superhero myth is. They just think it's power and a costume.
Something they can cosplay.
Yeah, and that is the problem we keep returning to, really.
Well, part of it, I don't know, since I've been writing comics, the more I think about it, I think I have basically this pool of ideas that I think are my good ideas. And then outside that, I have some, they're okay ideas, but they clearly need some work. I feel like most of these creators now have learned, some right and hard lessons, and is in that the big major publishers are going to screw you. They're going to take your idea and it'll be their own. And so they're pulling from their least popular idea pool, and that pool could be literally any comic. Like you could shift it over and say it's about something else. Like this was going to be my indie book about why I don't like America, but that would be a great Captain America storyline,
Yeah.
And I really think that's how most of the writers are coming up with their stories. It's like they're the stories that are out there, that they've had on their radar, but they're not their best ideas because they're saving their best ideas for something else.
No, I honestly believe Ta-Nehisi Coates is really writing what he believes, and he really does think it's his chance to
make his mark on the character.
Yeah,
he might be.
And
he might be, but
the guy's a sociopath. He has no empathy for people who aren't black, and he's pretty much said so.
Yeah, could be, but I do think maybe not in the case of Captain America, but I think many of these stories writers are just they want to save the best stuff that they have for themselves because they're incentivized to do so.
Well, what good writers are currently still working?
Well, working for the big two. That's the
Yeah.
thing. There's almost no point at this point.
I mean, I wouldn't want as we're going through this exercise too. I just think I don't want to write. I don't want to write any of these characters at all. I really don't. I would write like the Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just because I love them so much. But I don't know. I love Batman, love Spider-Man. Like, there's a lot of these characters I've loved, but I don't know. I wouldn't even want to try it now.
Yeah. And so, speaking of indie writers and better stories, why don't you guys tell everyone what you're working on?
Well, I am currently working on a year-long project that is nearing conclusion called Boobs of Steel, Busty Heroines and the Culture War. And yes, that is a clickbait title. It is absolutely a clickbait title and a clickbait cover, because that's how you're going to get people to pay attention to it. What it actually is a complete review and study of what has gone on and where everything has gone wrong with our entertainment, starting with comics and fiction. But then I also get into, animation. And I go through and show that, strange, or maybe not strangely enough, every single one of these always started with feminists bitching about someone's boob size. It has always begun with that. And by the end of it, you've got transvestite She-Ra. And I do the modern She-Ra versus the old She-Ra as a case study as one of the chapters. And I show how you go from She-Ra, which is essentially this Wonder Woman-esque character, to she looks too sexy, she's got her boobs are too big, to by the end of it, she's literally turning into a boy when she transforms. And just showing that. Then I also start getting into the archetypes and why they're important. I show that a lot of these Valkyrie and Amazon type characters in these pulp heroes or heroines as well have been with us since the beginning, and they do serve a function and they're important, and getting rid of them is extremely damaging. And the statement I bring up at the beginning was, as a child, I had always, I was like 4 years old, and believe it or not, in the late 1970s, yes, that's my age, in the late 1970s, around 4 years old, or maybe even 3, geez, there was actually a lot of superheroes on TV. People don't remember that. Now, their quality varied, just like now. But the two most popular, and I remember watching them as a kid, were the Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman. And I remember as a child seeing, well, okay, when Banner, hulks out, his ultra-masculine form, his muscles are what made him powerful when he went berserk. And he'd burst out of his clothing and become the Hulk. And then I'd watch Wonder Woman. It's like, okay, well, Diana spins around and she's got this great body afterwards. It's not buried underneath clothing. It's like, she's got a rack. It's like, those must be her girl muscles. And that logic actually is true in a sense. Symbolically, that form is kind of an outward symbolism of feminine strength. And by destroying that, it's really dangerous. And I then take it to the hero's journey. I talk about the legend of the Amazons and where it really came from. But yeah.
And I think the real question is, how do we get this as required reading for gender studies courses?
Oh, I wish.
There's got to be a way we could sneak that in. Like if you put on the description, like, how would you call it? Like a critical analysis of, just use all the buzzwords on the back of the book.
Right. Critical analysis. I should use that.
Get it peer reviewed by the right, people, and you can, it'll pass muster,
All right. And so Boobs of Steel, which is more of a like an analytical book, you would say. But what if people are in the mood for some?
Well, okay, yes, but it is not written dry. I have written it to
No?
make it very
Okay.
entertaining. It's very playful in the language. It knows what it is. It's humorous at times.
And I have heard some of it because you occasionally will read chapters or parts of chapters on your
Right.
channel,
Or at least the
which
rough versions. Yeah, actually, that's been very useful, reading out the rough drafts and getting the audience response. So, okay, you want fun reading? Well, there are two places you can find some fun reading. The first place is to search Josh Finney on Amazon.com, and that is the name I write under for comics. I have a number of series. The one I would recommend most to listeners right now is Case File Arkham, Book 1 and 2. It's an ongoing series, and it is classic 1940s detective noir set in Lovecraft's Arkham, the most cursed city on the world. And it really is if you've followed any of Lovecraft. And this detective essentially keeps stumbling upon the stories. And it's I would say it's like, what if Raymond Chandler wrote Lovecraft stories? So if you want stories where men are men, women are gorgeous, and hell beasts from the abyss do not come with a trigger warning, Case File Arkham. As Josh Finney, you can read some of my prose work. And for that, I would recommend everyone read Scars, which is probably the most surprising buddy story you'll ever read. It's a wounded warrior story, and it's about an uplifted animal as well. No, not furries. But it's about a fallen astronaut who can't do his job anymore. And in his recovery, he is assigned a support animal. And it's loosely based on my own struggles with post-traumatic stress. Not to get into it, I got shot in the back at age 18, and yeah. But it came out of that, and then suddenly, must be almost 8 years ago now. We got rats, my wife did, and I ended up befriending one of them, and it was one of the most therapeutic things that helped me out of the post-traumatic stress. So there's some real stuff in there, but then it's set under the framing of this astronaut who's fallen, and I don't want to give away too much about the rat. And he is loosely based on the rat that kind of, yeah. And that's Ishiro Finney on Amazon.
And I did notice that there are some versions available for Kindle as well.
Oh, you mean my novel Scars?
Yes. I thought there were a couple things for Kindle.
Oh, they're all.
Oh, they're all.
All of my work is available on Kindle. All the comics are also in print except Titanium Rain, and you can order them. We've got them in stock. You can get them through Amazon. They're very high quality, very, very high quality. And I believe each graphic novel is over 100 pages. So there's that. And then Scars is available in print as well.
Excellent. Clint, what's on your plate?
We got a lot. So Dracula, Clint Stoker's Dracula is in production right now. It is getting close actually to being finished, which is it's crazy. I'm also working on a Monstro miniseries. It'll be that'll be really fun, and I'm looking forward to that.
So Monstro, the character from Downcast.
Yep.
Your science fiction series.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, and I'm fleshing out the Downcast universe a little bit more, and I just thought it's just such an interesting character that I want to just play with him in his world. So it's I guess a prequel to Downcast, but you wouldn't need to read it or Downcast it's just sort of a self-contained thing. So I'm working on that. Currently, no idea when that's going to come out, but Dracula for sure is that'll be the next book up that'll be released. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
And how's Fatal going?
Fatal's going. I actually talked to Charlie today, and he's on page 44 of 52.
Nice.
So it's really close. It feels like so close yet so far. But yeah, that one has been a big work in progress. The artwork is simply amazing. I'm pretty excited about the story when people get it. It's going to be really fun. I think there's some just interesting different things, different muscles, writing muscles that I'm exercising in it that yeah, are just very different from other things I've written. So I think it'll be pretty fun. But that's like my highest priority. As soon as he's finished with those pages, the goal is to get that shipped out and into people's hands. So looking forward to that.
And for anyone who might be on the fence with some of Clint's work, you can always get Downcast from Alterna Comics. I believe $2.
Yeah,
each?
$1.99. Yeah, you want to try out issue number 1? $1.99 is like, I mean, you can't beat that. That's super cheap for the first issue. You can also just go to sweetcomicshop.com if you want to get the whole trade paperback. It's the first 4 issues. What will be the first 4 issues of Downcast through Alterna, and then I have volume 3 out as well. So there's a substantial, what's turning out to be a substantial body of work with Downcast, and it's yeah, it's fun. People loved Downcast volume 3 too. It went over very well. So yeah,
I will have to pick that up. I'm looking at the art right now. You're good.
thanks. Yeah, I didn't draw it.
Okay.
But I wrote it though. But yeah, I agree with you. The artwork is pretty great. I don't know, it's fun. It's Nacho Lazaro or Ignacio Lazaro did the artwork on that, and he just has such an interesting, unique style, and he's so good with storytelling in the art that it just, I don't know, it just has this fun flair to it. So
All right. And I don't have any projects announced right now, but later this year, hopefully we'll start getting to see a little more of that as the year goes on. But tomorrow night, I will be on the Dungeon Delvers channel. And we are going to talk about old school RPGs, a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons, and I will be appearing in his Gamma World setting where it's basically something like 2462 or something. It's a post-apocalyptic world, and I honestly have no idea what's going on. But I did find out you cannot be a wizard. So we'll see how that goes tomorrow night.
nice.
All right. So Clint, Ishi, thank you both very much for coming on. I had a lot of fun. And hopefully in the future, we'll have time to talk about some more superheroes. I really want to hear that Green Arrow idea.
Oh yeah, it's, you know what, it was the Captain America I did. I ended up folding some of that into there, but yeah, something along those lines. He's got to learn some lessons.
Can I add one more thing before we
Yeah,
sign off?
absolutely.
For anyone who's interested in more talk and reviews of indie novels and comics, because let's face it, right now, as we discussed, there is a dearth of good material, but actually there isn't. There's quite a lot out there. They're just not getting the attention they deserve. Every week on the Wordcraft podcast here on Amazon or on YouTube, Joe. God, I am not awake. The Wordcraft podcast, we interview authors every Wednesday, and they talk about their work, and it's always not woke.
And who do you have coming on next week?
Well, CJ Corella, who apparently is best known not for his space opera stories and the Void Marines, but rather being the author of, a couple of the world settings for Rifts.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely check those out if you're interested in novels. There's been a lot of really interesting guests for last, month and a half, 2 months?
Yeah. Last 2 months.
So Here's the link. Go check it out. And yes, wait, Dominic. So, all right, we'll end it here. Thanks everyone for coming. Hopefully we'll be back in the not too distant future.